Repair Clinic encourages you to perform this procedure safely. In this video, we will show one or more of these icons to alert you when to use caution. Most engine repairs will require some disassembly. Before you attempt this, make sure the engine has cooled. The ignition switch is in the off position and the key has been removed, if applicable. To access components like the flywheel, carburetor, starter, and cylinder head, you will need to remove the blower housing. To do this, first disconnect the headlight wire harness, if applicable. Then lift up the hood or engine cover and detach it. Now rotate the air filter cover retaining knobs counterclockwise and pull off the cover. Lift out the air filter. Use a 1/4-inch socket or nut driver to unthread the screw inside the filter housing. Now use a 3/8-inch socket or wrench to unthread the 4 blower housing mounting bolts. Detach the oil drain tube, and you can lift off the blower housing. To access the flywheel, use a flathead screwdriver to help pry off the screen assembly cap. Next, use a pipe wrench to secure the drive pulley, and a 15/16-inch socket to unthread the flywheel mounting bolt. Remove the bolt and lift off the screen assembly and washer. Lift off the flywheel fan. To fully remove the flywheel, rethread the bolt and use a flywheel puller to help detach it. Unthread the bolt and lift off the flywheel. Reinstall or replace the flywheel by aligning the notch in the flywheel with the slot on the crankshaft. Now insert the flywheel key into the slot and push it into place. Realign the flywheel fan. Replace the screen assembly. Make sure the washer is in place, then rethread the flywheel mounting bolt. Torque the bolt to 100 foot-pounds. Snap the cap into place. To remove the carburetor, use a 7/16-inch socket to unthread the mounting nuts securing the air inlet pipe. Detach the breather tube and set the pipe aside. Use locking pliers to crimp the fuel line. Release the retaining clamp and pull the fuel line off of the carburetor. Disconnect the solenoid wire harness. Use a 5/16-inch deep well socket or nut driver to unthread the carburetor mounting bolts. Note the orientation of the linkages. Then detach the throttle rod and spring, and release the carburetor from the choke rod. Reinstall the carburetor by first attaching it to the choke rod. Next, attach the throttle rod and spring. Confirm that the gasket is in place on the intake manifold. Position the carburetor, then thread the mounting bolts and tighten. Connect the solenoid wire harness. Reattach the fuel line to the carburetor. Secure it with the retaining clamp. And remove the locking pliers. Confirm that the O-ring is in place on the air inlet pipe, then align the pipe on the carburetor and secure it with the mounting nuts. Reattach the breather tube to the pipe. If you need to remove the cylinder head, use a 3/8" socket to unthread the bolts to release the intake manifold. Detach the breather tube from the air inlet pipe. Slide the choke rod out of the control bracket to set the carburetor assembly aside. Next, detach the wire in boot from the spark plug and pull the wire free of the mounting bracket. Use a 5/8" socket or a spark plug wrench to help unthread the spark plug. Use the 3/8" socket to remove the bolts securing the mounting bracket. Pull the bracket off. Now use a 1/4" hex bit to unthread the exhaust manifold bolts. With the bolts removed, pull the exhaust manifold free of the muffler. Use the 3/8" socket to unthread the valve cover mounting bolts. Starting on a corner, you can use a putty knife to help break the seal, and a large flathead screwdriver to help pry off the cover. Be prepared for a small amount of oil to spill. If necessary, rotate the flywheel to loosen the rocker arms. Then use a 5/8" wrench to secure the pivot nuts and a T20 Torx bit screwdriver to loosen the set screws securing the rocker arms. Rotate the arms and remove the 2 push rods. Use the 3/8" socket to unthread all of the cylinder head mounting bolts. With the bolts removed, you can pull off the cylinder head. Before you replace the cylinder head, make sure the head gasket is aligned on the mounting pins. Now reposition the cylinder head and thread the mounting bolts. To avoid warping the head, first torque the bolts to 150 inch-pounds in a specific alternating pattern. Now torque the bolts in the same pattern to 250 inch-pounds. With the head fully secured, insert the aluminum intake push rod through the lower guide. You can rotate the flywheel to help determine if the rod is properly positioned. With the rod in the down position, confirm that the valve cap is in place. Then align the rocker arm on the cap and push rod and secure it loosely. Repeat this procedure to install the steel exhaust push rod with the red indicator mark. With the rocker arms in place, rotate the flywheel until the piston is approximately a quarter of the way past its top position, and both rocker arms are loose. Confirm that the gaps between the rocker arms and the valve caps are at manufacturer's specifications. The intake valve gap should be between 3 and 5 thousandths of an inch. The exhaust valve gap should be between 5 and 7 thousandths of an inch. With the gap set, tighten the pivot nut set screws. Next, scrape off any sealant residue from the valve cover. Apply new sealant to the cover. Now reposition the cover on the cylinder head. Thread the bolts and torque the bolts to 60 inch-pounds. Insert the exhaust manifold into the muffler. Confirm that the gasket is in place. Then secure the manifold to the cylinder head with the mounting bolts. Rethread the spark plug. Be careful not to damage the threads by over-tightening. Reattach the boot to the plug. Reposition the mounting bracket and secure it with the bolts. Make sure the intake manifold O-ring is in place. Attach the choke rod to the control bracket and the breather tube to the air inlet pipe. Position the intake manifold on the cylinder head, then thread and tighten the bolts to secure. You can now reinstall the blower housing. Make sure the housing is properly seated on the air diverter. Rethread and tighten the mounting bolts to secure the housing. The longer bolts go in the back. Replace the screw in the filter housing. Reposition the air filter. Realign the cover and rotate the retaining knobs clockwise to secure. Reattach the oil drain tube to the blower housing. With the engine reassembled, reinstall the hood or engine cover and reconnect the headlight wire harness if applicable.